In a previous video, I broke down the three main ways to launch an Airbnb: buying, leasing, or co-hosting. But in this video, I'm going deeper into the buying pathway, because buying your first Airbnb can either be your biggest win, or if you make the wrong choice, it could be your most expensive mistake. So whether you're just starting your research or maybe already actively shopping for a property, this is the information that you need to make the most strategic choice. Now, the first thing that you want to consider is whether or not you're selecting the right market. And here are a few things that you want to look at. You want to select a market that has roughly between 55 and 64% occupancy rate and an average daily rate of between $120 to $179. This is just a target estimate. This will actually help you to make sure that you're getting in the right range of a market that is likely to be successful. The next thing that you want to consider is whether or not Airbnb is permitted in the market that you are looking at. A number of cities have introduced a host of regulations over the past several years, requiring you to have to register an Airbnb and actually get permission before you're able to operate an Airbnb in that market. So the last thing that you'll want to do is to rush into purchasing a property only to find out that you cannot actually operate an Airbnb in that market. So do not skip this step, because it is one of the most critical steps to ensure that you're starting from a smart way and not rushing down a path where you're picking a property that ultimately may not get permitted in that market. So check local regulations as a very first step. The next thing that you want to look at is whether or not that market has steady demand. There are some markets such as beach towns that may be seasonal in nature. They may just get summer and spring travelers, but may actually be quite dead in the winter months. You shouldn't be dissuaded by this, but it's one of those factors that you have to look at closely to ensure that the peak seasons can actually help you offset the low seasons. So seasonality and demand is the next criteria that you want to consider. And there are a number of tools that we use to make this much easier, but the one I want to point your attention to is one we use called AirDNA. And AirDNA allows you to see real-time market data that allows you to view the average nightly rates. It helps you to view whether or not this market has strong occupancy. It also allows you to be able to see seasonal trends, which are critical data to help you selecting a market. AirDNA also allows you to spot high profit opportunities. This may be some of the properties as well as neighborhoods that others without this data may overlook. And so you want to tap into this feature in AirDNA prior to both picking a city and putting an offer in on a potential property. Finally, AirDNA offers a revenue calculator that allows you to not just project your monthly expenses, but also your annual revenue. And this is a critical tool that pulls together a host of data that helps you kind of cut through the fluff to determine whether or not you're picking a property that is ultimately going to be profitable. So that final feature in AirDNA is a critical one that you'll want to look at. Now, the next step in the buying process is you want to put together a budget. And in this budget, you'll want to consider a few factors. You want to consider your budget, both your down payment as well as your closing costs. You also want to think about, well, how much is it going to cost to actually set up this property? And on average, you'll want to budget between 10 and 20% of the home price as a general target for how much it will cost to actually set up the property. As a target, you want to have at least 2 to 3 months of reserves to help you weather the storm through the process it's going to take to set up this property, getting on Airbnb, and start to get your first guests. And again, the AirDNA tool will actually help you calculate all these numbers, sifting it down to help you determine whether or not you're making a smart choice with the property that you're considering. And if you're interested in getting real numbers, I'm talking y'all, no fluff details on how to start and operate a profitable Airbnb, you're gonna wanna hit the subscribe button, because I post videos every single week that is just like this, laser focused in helping first-time hosts get started and become profitable as quickly as possible in running an Airbnb. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. All right, now on to step 3. So once you've put together your budget, the next step in the process is going to be seeking out financing for your project. And here are a few loan options that you want to consider. And typically this type of loan will require 15 to 25% down. And I know for some people, this is a significant amount. When we were getting started, this was one of the biggest barriers that slowed us down in buying our first property. But the conventional loan requiring 15 to 25% down is one of the most common ways that folks will finance the cost of their first Airbnb. More recently, a loan product called the DSCR loan is actually becoming a lot more profitable. And the unique feature of this type of loan is that it actually is based on the property's income, not your personal income. And this can actually be a great way to purchase an Airbnb, because if you're selecting a property that has high income potential, the loan officer can use the future income potential of the property to actually help you qualify for that loan. And the third option that is somewhat popular, especially for people who already own one property, and that option is called the HELOC, or the Home Equity Line of Credit. And using this product, individuals will tap into the equity of their existing property, draw down that equity, and use that equity to actually purchase and set up their first property. And a key tip here is you'll want to start early, lock in your financing, lock in your resources before you actually start to actively looking at properties and engaging potential sellers. And here in the next few weeks, I'm going to do a separate video on how to analyze a potential property like a pro. But here are a few of the factors that you want to consider in determining whether or not a target property is actually a potentially strategic choice. And in order to do that, there's a little math that you'll have to do along the process. Not the kind of math that should get you running for the hills if you're not a math person, but you'll want to look at the estimated annual daily rate times the occupancy rate to arrive at your gross revenue. So that is estimated annual daily rate times your estimated occupancy rate. That will give you your gross revenue. Then what you'll want to do is you'll want to subtract all of your expenses. So that is all of your utilities, all of the disposable goods, the internet service, the cost of your cleaners cleaning and turning over your property. Subtract all of those expenses, and that will actually get you at your cash on cash return on investment. And the percentage target that you want to strive for is between 20 to 30% cash on cash ROI. That is a critical number that helps you to determine whether or not you're starting from a profitable window. And again, I am going to dive into this in much more detail over the next several weeks. But if you want a tool that actually helps you do this, not manually, but a little bit more automatedly, again, AirDNA is the tool that can actually be your best friend in taking all of this data and then helping to kind of crunch the numbers to help you get a much more clear view on whether or not you're making a smart choice in both identifying as well as putting in an offer on a target property. So check out AirDNA. It's a wonderful tool that can help you do some of this stuff in a much more automated way. So once you've assessed the market, once you've assessed the property, you've secured your financing, you've made sure that you're actually looking at both a market as well as potential properties that could actually be profitable, not just for the short term, y'all, but for the long term. You are actually ready now to engage a real estate agent, go out and look at properties, and then potentially put an offer in on a property. I want to encourage you to identify and try to work with real estate agents that have experience working with investors. And there are some agents that have experience working with Airbnbs. So getting a real estate agent that is used to working with investors, maybe even specifically Airbnbs, is going to be a really important step. Next, I want to remind you that almost everything in a real estate deal is negotiable. So as you're putting in an offer on a property, I want to encourage you to try to negotiate some things such as your down payment. Maybe negotiate having some of the furniture rolled in to the deal. You know, sometimes individuals may be selling a property and they may not want to drag all that furniture with them to a new property. That may be an easy way to actually get to a yes on that property. So I want to just encourage you to negotiate ferociously in ensuring that you're getting the best potential deal and the best terms possible. Once you find a property, you put in an offer and you're working through that process, I want to encourage you to plan ahead. And here are a few things that you want to look ahead while you're working through this process. You want to begin thinking about your setup timeline. How long is it going to take you to actually get this property ready? You also want to make sure that you have the right insurance that is necessary. Any permits that may be required. Now is a great time while you have that offer in on that property and you're waiting to close on that property. It's a great time to look at your timeline, to also think about insurance, as well as to think about any permits that you need in order to operate this property. And the day is finally here. You have gotten to closing on your first property. You're celebrating ferociously. But not too much, y'all, because now you have to actually look at getting that property set up. And down below, I'm including my Airbnb setup checklist. It is the room by room checklist that we use to prioritize the items that you need in order to make sure that you're not buying things that you don't need at this point. You're able to find the things that you need for every single room in that Airbnb, and you can grab that setup checklist down below. As you're thinking about setting up your property, I want to draw your attention to a few of the tools that may be really important to actually lift up in this video. And that is some of the smart tech items such as a thermostat, such as a smart lock. Those are going to be essential items that may require you to do some modifications to the property to get these installed. Additionally, you will want to have professional photos. Photos is going to be one of the first ways in which individuals encounter your listings. You will want really sharp, crisp, and clear photos that tells a strong story about that property. So do not take your photos with your phone, but rather bring in a photographer that specializes in photographing real estate to take really sharp photos and maybe even video of your property. And in addition to the photos, you want to begin drafting a compelling copy of your listing, highlighting the key features that are actually potentially the thing that makes your property stand out. In addition to the photos, having a sharp, tight, and concise listing copy is going to be an essential feature to help you set up for success. So now that you know the full process for buying your first Airbnb, if you're still deciding which city is right for you, but don't want to go through the guesswork, I want to again encourage you to download the Airbnb Profit Map. It shows you how to evaluate demand, spot legal red flags, and how to match the market to your goals in under 10 minutes. And the link for this is down below. Go ahead and grab it right now. And you have the steps, they're in your hand. You have the details for how to buy your first property. But even the perfect property will fail if you pick the wrong city. And so you're going to want to watch this next video where I break down the top 10 cities for Airbnb in 2025. Again, y'all, this is based on real data, not hype. And if you pair the information that you gain in this video with that video, you're going to be ahead of 90% of the other hosts in your market. So go ahead and watch that next video.